As you know, Kenya is taking up several projects in the energy sector to meet the growing demand in the country, and a number of players have come to invest in the country. Among them is Solar Century, and this afternoon we're joined by Guy Lawrence, who is a director for Solar Century, helping us to understand why the recent buzz in the energy sector. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you.
First things first, we understand that solar energy is becoming one of the big talking points in the continent. Why is this so?
I think the interesting thing about solar is it's the only energy generation source which continually falls in price. And the cost of solar now is at grid parity with maybe 30, 40 countries around the world. So the take-up of solar globally has been absolutely huge. I mean, you have countries like Germany where a few weeks ago, the 100% of 100% of usage of electricity in the country was from renewable energy sources. Mm-hmm. And solar is really at the forefront because of the falling cost.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about solar energy, for Kenya, we do have a lot in hydropower as well as geothermal also coming in strong. We're yet to see much investments coming through for solar as well as wind. Perhaps what does the future look like for investors in solar energy?
So I think that the uptake of solar worldwide is coming to Kenya. We're in its infancy, if you like. We've got plentiful resources of solar in Kenya. And hydro has been good. Solar has been misunderstood for many years. And I think the government, the public and the private sector are beginning to understand how solar can play a greater part in our economy. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps looking at the solar issue around power, alternative energy, some say it's quite expensive at the initial setup costs compared to other sources. How true is this?
It's when you buy a car, it's expensive according to what your income is. I mean, the simple fact of the matter with solar is the levelized cost of solar over the lifetime of the system comes in far lower than your grid price or any other energy generation source. Mm-hmm. So yes, for some businesses, the initial upfront might be high. They see their savings, they're paying it back in 5 or 6 years. And what's just come into the Kenyan market and something that Solar Century have developed is now we can actually finance that initial capex and so take that burden away from the company or the business. Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not wrong, you actually recently launched one of the major projects in Kenya. It's actually the biggest solar roof in the region, if I'm not wrong. Tell us about it.
So, I mean, in the last couple of months, we've signed, some good solar contracts with SCP, an insect research facility. And on Friday last week, we were very excited to have signed with a company called London Distillers. They have a pioneering chairman who's determined to make his businesses go green. And we'll be building just under 1 megawatt of solar on the roof of their factory in Athi River. And effectively, this will translate into savings year on year of about $180,000 for the business. So it is a market leader in its sector anyway, and with this saving, it's going to become far more efficient and more competitive in the market. Mm-hmm. And we applaud clients and businesses like London Distillers for taking the leap. I mean, they're really the pioneers in their sectors.
Mm-hmm. And the big conversation right now is how can we move this to the common man on the ground in terms of creating access for them, because not every household is connected to the national grid. Of course, solar energy tries to offer that sort of convenience for those that cannot be connected to the national grid. How do we ensure that the uptake is sustainable and it continues to grow over time?
So I think it's a great question, and one of the interesting things about solar is it's very scalable. From the small little solar light, which you can just buy independently and charge during the day, to the mini grids, which are rural villages off the grid. They can have their own central solar generation source and batteries, to the businesses like London Distillers, to the large utility where you're providing mass power to Kenya Power. So solar really is scalable across all different sectors and all different sizes. So I think because it's reached grid parity, it doesn't require subsidies or anything else. As long as the government has as long as they keep their open mind on solar, I think we're going to see an increased growth in all of those different lines of solar.
Many thanks. Guy Lawrence there, a director at Solar Century, just breaking it down for us to understand what the solar potential the country has and how costly or how cheap can it be for you back at home.